Beetles with as with a Z. Get your mind out of the gutter. What do you think about the prior probability of theism compared to other explanations for fine-tuning like axiarchism, multiverse, etc.? Also, does fine-tuning take naturalism off the table? So, prior probabilities are extremely difficult to determine, partly because it's not even clear what factors determine intrinsic probability. Again, there are some views here, and some views are plausible. And, I lean towards some of these views. Like, I quite like Draper's account, but it's at least not entirely clear what factors determine intrinsic probability. Coherence, modesty, simplicity. What about the approximately other dozen dimensions of simplicity? Fit with background knowledge, intuition, question mark? Like, there's just so much debate about this sort of thing. They're also extremely difficult to determine, partly because it's not clear how these factors relate to one another. For example, whether the positive epistemic status of simplicity derives from the positive epistemic status of a combination of coherence and modesty. Prior probabilities are also extremely difficult to determine, partly because it's not clear how to weigh these different factors in determining intrinsic probability. So even once we can get settled on which factors determine intrinsic probability and how these factors relate to one another, like if some of them are reducible to others, it's not at all clear how to weigh these different factors in relation to one another. And even if we could do all that, prior probabilities are still extremely difficult to determine because we don't have numerical values here and can only go off of like super rough estimates that are typically only like comparative in nature. And it's also very difficult, partly because even once we've settled all these issues, it's not clear how well these views do with respect to the relevant factors affecting intrinsic probability. And it's also unclear how well they do in comparison with one another with respect to the relevant factors affecting intrinsic probability. So anyway, this all is kind of like a mess. There are so many different questions here, and they're all incredibly difficult to solve. And this is partly why agnosticism seems to make sense. Like, these issues are overwhelmingly complicated, and it's thoroughly unclear, at least to me, how to resolve them in a satisfactory way.